That's when the Pilgrims came over, right? Okay. So the title of the book, rather small under his name and title as Lord Chancellor of England, is Instauratio Magna, which means the Great Restoration. Restoration of what? Of the way of knowing, right? A part of it is called the Novum Organum, and it develops the inductive scientific method based on experiment to replace Aristotelian deduction, which is you maybe did one experiment sometime and then you reason everything from that. But he says, no, you have to do more experiments. Now, there's an interesting thing here. One of the devices on the title, on this frontispiece, is 2 pillars. What in the world are they doing there? Well, they're the same pillars that you see on this. That's a piece of 8. You know, Treasure Island, pieces of 8. See, it's 8 reales. And it came from the silver of Mexico. It was minted in Mexico City, right? So, and there you see the same pillars, and on them it says plus ultra, more beyond. Beyond what? What are the pillars? Pardon me? It's Africa and Spain, but it's the pillars of Hercules, which are the mouth of the Mediterranean, the old classical world, right? So there's the mountain of Moses in Morocco and the mountain of Tariq, which is the name of Gibraltar, right? So here's the Mediterranean, the classical world of Aristotle, and you can sail out into the New World and bring back silver, for example, right? There's danger, of course, right? But look at what it says at the bottom. What will be brought back? Not just silver, right? Multi per transibunt et augebitur scientia. Many will pass through, and knowledge will be increased, right? So we go beyond Aristotle into experimentally based science, and knowledge will be increased. So here's some quotes from the Instauratio Magna. That wisdom which we have derived principally from the Greeks, no offense, okay, is but like the boyhood of knowledge and has the characteristic property of boys. It can talk, but it cannot generate. It is but a device for exempting ignorance from ignominy. That means it's a way of hiding your ignorance. And we'll see examples of that. We'll talk about in Lecture 11 about correlation energy. And we'll talk in Lecture 32 about strain energy. And you'll see that both of these are just words that are used to hide our ignorance. Okay? The end which this science of mind proposes is the invention not of arguments, but of arts, ways of doing things, right? Not so much by instruments, although new instruments are important, like microscopes and so on, as by experiments, skillfully and artificially devised for the express purpose of determining the point in question. So artificial experiments designed to decide a question. Experiments. And this will lead to the restoration of learning and knowledge. So followers of Bacon established the Royal Society in 1662, just after Charles was restored to England after the period of Cromwell. And there was a history written of the Royal Society, a book about this thick, published in 1667, only 5 years after it was founded. Why did they publish a history so soon? Well, let's look at this, the frontispiece of this book. Here's the late Francis Bacon, who is said to be Artium Instaurator, the restorer of the arts. Okay, and here's the president of the Royal Society, the mathematician, Viscount Brouncker. And here in the middle, being crowned with laurel, is Charles II. Why do they have him up on a pedestal? Because they're hoping, as scientists have before and ever since, to extract some money out of the government to do their research. They actually never got it from Charles, but it wasn't for lack of trying. And this is why They wrote the history to try to make the case for being supported. Okay, now let's look at all the good things that will come from science, from the Royal Society. In the background, can you see what that is? We'll blow it up. Here, there's a hint to it on the bookshelf. If you look really fine on the bookshelf, you can see that some of them have writing on the spine. Do you see what that one is? Can anybody read it? What? What science book do you think they might have had? Copernicus. Right? So astronomy. That's a telescope in the back. Okay, or over here on the wall. What's that thing? It's a clock. Why is it shaped like a piece of pie?
Because it has a pendulum.
Ah, because it has a pendulum inside. Okay? So, orology, making good clocks. Okay, or here, what's that thing? That's hard for you to know. It's a wind gauge. It has a vane inside that blows on and you can tell from how far it goes on the scale how strong the wind is. So, meteorology. And back here on the pillar, what are those things for? For cartography, right? Now, what do all these things have in common that they're going to do for Charles II? Astronomy, good clocks, meteorology, cartography. What? They all have to do with navigation, right? With making England strong at sea. Now, back here is another science. Chemistry. That doesn't seem to have anything to do with navigation. Why would chemistry be important to Charles?
War.
Look at it.
War.
To make gunpowder. There was a chapter about gunpowder in the history of the Royal Society. Okay. And up here at the top is the motto, which is nullius in verba, which comes from this quote from Horace. And what it says is, lest you ask who leads me, in what household I lodge, that is, what philosophy I advocate, there is no master in whose words I am bound to take an oath. Wherever the storm forces me, there I put in as the guest. So it's the experiment, not the philosopher, that leads you to the conclusion, right? So nullius in verba is in the words of none, okay? And in fact, the original name of the Royal Society was the Royal Society for the Improving of Natural Knowledge by Experiments. Okay, so we're going to see, as the course goes along, important experiments that really decided questions. And in fact, Bacon's most important kind of experiment was one that finally decides between two rival hypotheses, proving the one and disproving the other. So you can do all sorts of experiments and just be collecting butterflies. No, I don't mean to insult people who collect butterflies. It's a fine thing to do. But there's something special about experiments that really are designed to answer a question, right? Now, Bacon devised a name for such experiments, and they're based on this model, that you have a road that diverges, and you need to know which way to go between these two hypotheses. What do you need to know which way to go? You need a sign, or this was a cross that would be mounted at a crossroads, okay? So the Latin name for cross is crux. Do you see what they call the experiment?